It was a warm May evening in Pittsford, New York. The kind of evening where families left their windows open to let in the cool breeze, where children laughed and played outside without fear. In the courtyard of a quiet apartment complex, 4-year-old Kali Poulton pedaled her bright plastic tricycle, her big wheel, across the pavement. She was full of life, her giggles echoing against the walls of the buildings. For neighbors, it was a familiar sound, comforting, ordinary. Nothing about that evening felt dangerous. Nothing hinted at what was about to happen. But in a matter of minutes, the laughter stopped. The tricycle was left abandoned, and Kali was gone. Her mother, Judy, had only turned her attention away for a short time. She expected her little girl to come inside when called, but there was no answer. No small footsteps hurrying toward the door, just silence. At first, Judy thought maybe Kali had wandered to a neighbor's apartment, or that she was still riding just out of sight. But as the minutes stretched into an agonizing hour, fear began to grip her chest. Something was terribly wrong. How could a child vanish in such a short window of time? In a place where everyone felt safe, where children rode bikes and parents trusted their neighbors. That night marked the beginning of every parent's worst nightmare. The search for Kali Poulton would soon consume an entire community. Posters with her picture would flood the town. Police officers, volunteers, and neighbors would join hands, scouring parks, dumpsters, and riversides. And through it all, one mother's desperate cries for her daughter would pierce the nation's heart. Who could take a little girl from her tricycle in broad daylight? Who would want to hurt her? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, why? Before we continue, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Feel free to share in the comments. And to our amazing community, especially those of you who return week after week to seek justice and raise awareness, you are the reason this channel exists. Every share, every comment, every like is a voice for the voiceless. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because sometimes knowing what happened is the first step to stopping it from happening again. In the early 1990s, Pittsford, New York, was the kind of place families moved to because it felt safe. Just a short drive from Rochester, it was a town filled with neat rows of apartments, manicured lawns, and neighbors who waved to each other. For many, it was a community where bad things didn't happen, at least not the kind of bad things you'd see on the evening news. Among the families who lived there was a single mother named Judy Gifford Tosh. Judy wasn't rich. She didn't live in a fancy home or drive a new car. But she worked hard to give her daughter the best life she could. That daughter was Kali Poulton, a little girl who was the center of Judy's world. Kali was only 4 years old, but she had a personality that filled every room. She had bright eyes, an endless curiosity, and a laugh that could warm anyone's heart. Neighbors remembered how she would chatter away about the simplest things, or how she would ride her tricycle in circles in the courtyard until her mother called her in for dinner. For Judy, Kali wasn't just a daughter, she was her entire reason to keep going. Raising a child alone wasn't easy. Bills piled up, work hours were long, but every sacrifice felt worth it when she came home to see Kali's smile. Judy often told friends that Kali was her best friend, her companion in life. Kali was an only child, and because of that, she and her mother had a bond that was almost unbreakable. They did everything together: shopping trips, bedtime routines, even watching cartoons side by side. Kali loved her stuffed animals, coloring books, and most of all, her big wheel tricycle. The plastic wheels made a clattering sound as she raced over the pavement, and neighbors often joked that you could hear Kali before you could see her. The apartment complex they lived in, Gleason Estates, was home to many families. Kids played outside, parents chatted by the mailboxes, and it was common to see children riding their bikes around while parents kept half an eye on them from the windows. To Judy, this was the perfect place for her little girl. Safe, friendly, a neighborhood where everyone knew each other. But the truth is, danger can hide anywhere, even in the places we trust the most. The evening of May 23, 1994. That Monday started like any other. Judy went about her day, making sure Kali was fed, dressed, and happy. They spent the afternoon together, Kali full of energy as always. As evening settled in, the temperature cooled, and the sky turned shades of orange and purple. It was the kind of evening where children begged to stay outside just a little longer. Kali wanted to ride her big wheel. For her, the tricycle wasn't just a toy, it was freedom. She loved the feeling of racing across the pavement, the wind brushing against her face, the sound of her little voice filling the courtyard. Judy allowed her to play outside while she kept busy inside their apartment, just steps away. After all, this was Pittsford, this was home. Neighbors saw Kali that night. She was wearing a cute summer outfit, her hair tied back. She pedaled fast, the wheels echoing. She laughed as she went in circles, her voice carrying through the courtyard. For anyone watching, it was just an ordinary child doing ordinary things. But in a matter of minutes, everything changed. Judy called out to her daughter from the apartment window. Dinner was almost ready, and it was time for Kali to come inside. She expected the usual, her daughter's little face peeking around the corner, her tricycle screeching as it turned, and then the sound of footsteps rushing back home. But there was no answer. Judy stepped outside, expecting to see Kali pedaling nearby. Instead, she saw silence. The big wheel was there, tipped slightly to the side, but the little girl who had been laughing and playing just moments earlier was gone. At first, Judy thought maybe Kali had gone into a neighbor's apartment. Kids in Gleason Estates often visited each other, playing games or sharing snacks. She knocked on doors, asking quickly, "Have you seen Kali?" Neighbors shook their heads. No one had. The search widened. Judy's heart began to pound. She called Kali's name over and over again, her voice echoing into the night air. Other residents began stepping outside, realizing something was wrong. Parents joined in, looking behind bushes, in stairwells, in laundry rooms. But Kali was nowhere. Within an hour, the police were called. Officers arrived and began combing the area. Flashlights pierced the darkening sky as they searched every corner of the complex. Judy, frantic and trembling, clutched at anyone she could, begging for answers. She was just here. She was right here. Neighbors would later recall the sound of her cries that night. The desperation in her voice was unforgettable. As word spread, more and more people joined in. Volunteers, friends, strangers. They scoured the complex, the streets, the nearby fields. Search dogs were brought in, their noses to the ground. But the trail went cold quickly. It was as if Kali had vanished into thin air. But children don't just disappear. Someone somewhere had taken her. For Judy, the hours turned into a blur. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't sit down. Every part of her body trembled with fear and rage. Where was her daughter? Who would want to take a 4-year-old girl? Police began interviewing everyone in the complex. They asked neighbors what they saw, what they heard, who was around at the time. But there were no clear answers. Some neighbors thought they saw a man walking around earlier, but details were vague. Others mentioned strange cars, but nothing definite. The courtyard, once filled with the laughter of children, was now filled with flashing lights, police radios, and the heavy weight of silence. By midnight, the entire community knew. Posters were already being printed. The news media began arriving, cameras capturing the fear in Judy's eyes as she pleaded for her daughter's safe return. And for those who loved Kali, the unthinkable had just begun. The night Kali vanished, Pittsford stopped being just another quiet New York town. The community transformed almost instantly. Neighbors who had never spoken much to each other were now side by side, flashlights in their hands, combing every corner of the apartment complex. Parents who had tucked their children into bed came back outside, unwilling to rest while one mother's little girl was missing. Police set up a command post right outside Gleason Estates. Maps were spread across car hoods. Officers divided volunteers into groups, sending them into wooded areas, along the banks of the Erie Canal, and down the narrow roads that twisted out of town. It was exhausting work, but no one cared. All that mattered was finding Kali. By the next morning, her picture was everywhere. A smiling 4-year-old girl with light brown hair and bright eyes stared back from posters taped to light poles, gas stations, and store windows. The words "missing child" in bold black letters burned into the hearts of everyone who passed by. For Judy, the attention was overwhelming, but she knew it was necessary. She stood before the cameras, her face pale from sleepless nights, her voice trembling as she pleaded,
"Please, if anyone has my daughter, bring her back. She's only 4 years old. She needs her mother. Please."
Her words cracked under the weight of grief, but she kept talking, hoping that somewhere, the person who had her little girl might be watching. The community's efforts didn't stop. Flyers went to every corner of the city. Search parties checked abandoned houses, storage units, and even dumpsters. The fear was so great that no place felt too unlikely. People wanted answers, no matter how grim they might be. But with the search came another cruel reality: false leads. Strangers began calling the police tip line with supposed sightings. Some said they saw a little girl at a mall. Others swore they spotted her in a fast food restaurant or in the back seat of a stranger's car. Each tip lit a small flame of hope in Judy's heart, only for it to be extinguished hours later when the lead went nowhere. Some calls were even worse: cruel hoaxes meant to torment. One caller claimed they had Kali and demanded money. Another described in gruesome detail what they had supposedly done to her. These were lies, but they cut into Judy's soul like knives. To think that people could exploit her suffering was almost too much to bear. Through it all, Judy refused to give up. She appeared on television repeatedly, sometimes barely holding herself together, sometimes breaking down in front of the cameras. Each time she begged the same way, for her daughter's safe return. The public began to recognize her face, the grieving mother whose little girl was out there somewhere. And yet, despite the massive effort, the days kept passing. The posters grew weathered. The volunteers grew tired. The media trucks came and went. But the silence around Kali's disappearance only deepened. It was as though the earth itself had swallowed her whole. Behind the scenes, police were working tirelessly. Detectives interviewed everyone in the complex, from longtime residents to newer tenants. They wanted to know who had been outside that night, who had noticed something unusual, and who might have had a reason to harm a child. Background checks were run on neighbors, delivery workers, even acquaintances of Judy. Any man in the area who had a criminal record or strange behavior was looked at closely. For a time, suspicion shifted from one person to another, but none of the leads stuck. No physical evidence tied anyone to Kali's disappearance. The case became one of the largest investigations Monroe County had ever seen. Hundreds of tips were logged, but each ended in disappointment. Detectives knew that whoever had done so in a matter of minutes, vanishing before anyone realized what was happening. That kind of boldness suggested someone who knew the area well, someone familiar enough with the routines of the residents to strike at the perfect moment. More than 2 years had passed since the night Kali Poulton vanished. 2 long years of unanswered questions, sleepless nights, and a mother's desperate hope. Judy never stopped fighting. She refused to let the world forget her daughter. Every birthday, every holiday, she felt the emptiness grow deeper. Yet somewhere inside, she prayed that Kali was still alive. Then, in August 1996, the truth finally came crashing down. Police received a shocking confession from the man who had been living just doors away from the Poultons all along, Mark Christie. Christie had always been around during the investigation, playing the role of the helpful neighbor. He joined search efforts, gave statements, and acted as though he cared. But in truth, he had been hiding the darkest secret of all. According to his confession, Christie lured Kali away. That warm May evening in 1994, he strangled her, then placed her tiny body inside a barrel. For more than 2 years, that barrel sat hidden in the basement of his friend's home, while Judy and the entire community searched desperately above ground. When police finally recovered the barrel and confirmed it was Kali, the community was devastated. It was the moment Judy had feared, but also the one she had long expected. The faint hope that Kali might still be alive was crushed forever. The news hit Pittsford like a storm. Neighbors who once searched with Christie were horrified to learn they had walked side by side with a killer. Volunteers who had scoured fields and rivers were left questioning every moment of the past 2 years. And Judy, her heart already shattered, had to endure the unbearable pain of knowing the truth about her daughter's final moments. Kali's body was laid to rest at last, but there was no peace in that burial, only grief and the burning need for justice. When Mark Christie stood before the court, the weight of his actions finally caught up to him. His face was blank, his voice flat, as he entered his plea, guilty. There would be no long trial, no lengthy battle of evidence. Christie had confessed, and now he would face the consequences. Still, the courtroom was packed. Friends, neighbors, reporters, all wanted to witness the moment justice was handed down. For Judy, sitting in that room was almost unbearable. To look at the man who had taken her daughter was like staring at pure evil. He hadn't just ended Kali's life, he had destroyed hers too. Every night since that day, she had dreamed of her little girl, of hearing her laugh again, of tucking her into bed, and now she knew that none of it would ever return. When the judge read the sentence, 25 years to life, the room felt heavy. Some gasped, others cried quietly. The community had demanded the harshest punishment possible. For many, even life in prison felt like too little, but at least Christy would never walk free again without the shadow of what he had done following him. Judy listened, her face etched with pain. Justice had been served, but it was a hollow kind of justice. Nothing, not even the harshest sentence, could bring Kali back. The courtroom was filled with outrage, with heartbreak, with disbelief that a neighbor, a man who lived among them, could do something so monstrous. Christy was led away in handcuffs, his head down. But for Judy, the chains on his wrists didn't ease the chains around her heart. She would carry this grief forever. After the sentencing, reporters gathered outside the courthouse. Judy spoke briefly, her voice raw, saying only what every mother in her position would. "I just want my daughter back. Nothing else matters." The case closed with Christy behind bars, but the wounds left on Pittsford would never truly heal. A community once proud of its safety was forever scarred. Parents watched their children more closely. Neighbors no longer trusted so easily. And Judy, she was left with memories. Memories of a little girl riding her big wheel on a warm May evening, her laughter echoing into the night before everything changed forever. Even after sentencing, Judy's pain didn't end, but her fight continued. She worked to keep her daughter's memory alive, reminding others of the dangers that can lurk closer than anyone imagines. Kali's story became a painful reminder that sometimes the threat is not far away, it's next door. For the people of Pittsford, the name Kali Poulton will never be forgotten. Her face, once printed on flyers and posters, remains etched in memory. Her story is told to new generations as both a warning and a call to vigilance. And for Judy, every day is a reminder of the little girl she lost, the child who loved her tricycle and brought sunshine into her mother's world. It began with a warm May evening and the sound of a child's laughter. It ended with a confession that broke a community's heart. But through the sorrow, one truth remains. Kali's memory lives on, not just in her mother's heart, but in the lessons her story leaves behind.